I want you to go back to some place in your life, somewhere where you have felt very unsupported and frightened, where there were no arms coming to help you, and it was a situation that you couldn't tell anybody. Where is it that you go? You go inside when you're just by yourself, and then you have to ask yourself, what is it you find when you get there? You're hoping to find a strength that's inside, hoping to find some kind of light, and a light that's not dependent on the outside and those outstretched arms. Joseph this week is thrown into such a place. His cries are unheard. As he yells, his voice just echoes in the dirt of the pit. And even the sounds from above slowly become more and more muffled. This is the boy who was coddled, who walked about in a striped coat, a symbol of authority given to him by his father. And now he's at the end of his world. If you recall, those of us who've joined us on Tuesdays or have been following the Parsha, his father had a similar experience. His father, Jacob, was the coddled brother by their mother, found himself just before his dream in the middle of nowhere with only a rock for a pillow. And here's Jacob's son, also coddled, finding himself at the end of his rope. He's the son of Rachel, the son of the favored wife. He's what is referred to in the Torah as Ben Zekunim. He's the son of the old age of his father and therefore favored again. He wears the striped tunic and he dreams of sheaves of wheat in the form of his brother bowing down to him. That's all gone. He's now alone, and we're told he's in a pit literally with no water in it. So in the Midrash, the pit with no water, the pit that's empty, is seen as water is often compared, and Torah is compared to water. And so he's somewhere with no Torah, somewhere with no spiritual source, no human values. It's a parched and dry place in every way. Everything that the word barren conjures up is in this book. We then see in the Torah outward callousness. The Torah goes out of its way to add this phrase. His brothers have just thrown him in the pit, initially thinking that they'll leave him there to die. And we're told, Vayeshvu le'echol lechem, and they sat down to break bread together. At the side of the pit, where the blood, the half-brother, is waiting to die with no water, they sit and eat bread. And of course, the Midrash points out the irony. Years later, it would be Joseph who would give them wheat and bread when they had none. Joseph, though, maintains something inside. He ends up being sold. He goes to Potiphar's house. But yeah, a successful man. He's not bitter, but he's full and vibrant. He's clearly kept something alive inside himself that he could be referred to, having been sold, having been enslaved, as Ish Matzliach, a man who exudes success. He overcomes being alone. He overcomes being in a new place. He overcomes and needing a new identity. He overcomes the whole idea of starting from scratch in a place that no one knows him. So you have to wonder, what is it he felt in that pit? He seems to maintain some kind of inner light. In the same verse where we hear he's Ish Matzliach, a man who exudes success, we're also told, Vayehi Adonai et Yosef. He kept God within him. He kept that inner light in any situation. So whether in the pit or in Potiphar's house, and then back in jail, and then as the second viceroy, this is a man who feels God's presence separate, the light of God, separate from what's happening around him. He seems to know that to survive in any darkness, he needs to rely on an inner spiritual light. This week, we're in the middle of a festival of ever adding light to light at a time of darkness. In fact, we're at 3 levels of darkness when we enter Channukah. We're at the darkest month of the year. We're at the darkest time in that month. And we can't light the candles until there's darkness to that particular day. So we're at 3 levels of darkness. And in fact, there's a famous argument between Hillel and Shammai. And frankly, Shammai, who usually loses between Hillel and Shammai, really has the more logical case. Shammai said, we're remembering a miracle where there was oil, and over 8 days, the oil got less and less and less, but it lasted. But it got less and less. And so really, on the first day of Hanukkah, we should light 8 candles. And the next day, we should light a candle less. And the next day, a candle less, until finally we're down to 1 candle, symbolizing how the oil went down, but lasted. What else says in this argument? You may have logic on your side, but what we want to teach people in a time of darkness is that light can increase. That we always want to add to holiness. And so Hillel rules that we start with 1 candle, even though it's a mismatch, the story, and every night we light a candle so that by the 8th night of Hanukkah, we're bathed in light. And of course, our custom is according to Hillel. This year, more than other years, the mitzvah of lighting is significant. Like Joseph in the pit, many of us are isolated by the pandemic, and lighting those wicks each night reminds us that we're not alone, that there's a light inside us, and hopefully we will also find lights outside of us. So here's a really interesting little piece of Talmud. In the Talmud Shabbat, this is startling. Rabbi Yirmiyah says there's a mitzvah to light the menorah, to light the candle, but there's also a mitzvah to see the light. So that according to Rabbi Yirmiyah, if you're walking along and you see that someone has lit a menorah, according to Rabbi Yirmiyah, you have to say a bracha, because it's not just, you have to say a blessing. It's not just the lighting of the menorah, but it's the seeing of the light, that's the mitzvah, to see light. And the message is clear. Joseph was thrown into darkness, but he always saw the light. In his darkest periods, he maintained that inner light, that light inside himself. As we move through Hanukkah this year in particular, we need to light flames, but we also need to see light. We need to help each other through it. And like Joseph, we need to find the inner light. No pit, no lack of water, no up or down in our life will ever extinguish. God was with Joseph, and God in an inner light is with us as well. And Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Okay, we have a